Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Bird Calls. I am David Grubb, of course, and I'm joined by my friend of the program, friend to Pelicans fans near and far, the one and only Chris Conner. Chris, always a pleasure to have you on, my brother.
Hey man, it's good to be on, good to be back to where it kind of all started for me, man. But anytime now, for those of y'all that don't know, look, if Grubb call, you gotta show up, man. He don't call often, he don't ask for much. Yeah, I mean, but it's always good to be there, man. One of my favorite basketball conversations I could think of, man. So happy to be here.
Man, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I love that the perspective that we always come from is first of all, it's a place of love for the game of basketball. I think you have to start from there. I think we are agendaless. You know what I mean? And I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, just how the scope of basketball conversation right now is very agenda driven. And I don't want to call nobody's names out in particular because it's across the whole spectrum of reporting and commentary at this stage, whether you're talking about ESPN or whomever. There's an agenda. There's a reason that they want you to feel a certain way when they're done. Just want to elevate the conversation. And I feel that's where you are too. Is like, I want to talk about these things. I might be right. I might be wrong, but there's a reason I'm saying what I'm saying. It's not to piss you off. It's not to get anybody to jump on my back and give me clicks. It's not to get for anybody to raise my hand up and say you the champ. It's just how I feel about the game that I love. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna tell you why. And if I'm wrong, I'll stand here and be like, I was wrong. I'm not gonna fight to be right. I always appreciate that because I feel like when we're done with a conversation, it's honest. Whether we were on the same page or not, it's honest and it's real.
Yeah, man. It has to be organic. It has to be real. It has to be genuine. I think that, and for some people, it's a part of their path and journey, kind of playing a tune for someone else or trying to figure out what works best for their own voice. But if you're not you, for better or for worse, whether it's considered positive or it's considered negative, like it's not going to last for very long. People are going to be able to see right through it. And even if folks aren't, if they don't share your thoughts in the beginning or they don't agree in the beginning, at some point, a lot of those people come back around. And if the worst thing, if the worst thing someone can say about you is, well, I don't necessarily like what he or she says, but they don't waver. They're gonna tell you how they feel. Well, I mean, there's worse things that people can say about you, man. And at the end of the day, like we do Pelicans or a lot of Pelicans content, but it's basketball before anything. So we're talking basketball that just so happens to be about the Pelicans. It's not Pelicans first. We're not leading with our emotions. And maybe at one point, I was someone that did, but as you grow in this and anything, man, you got to put the emotions to the side. Before New Orleans had a basketball team, I loved the game, and that's what's fun here. Agendas, you got to be okay with being wrong. You have to accept being wrong. You got to relish in being wrong. You're not going to bat 1,000. It's just how it goes. But, I'm just as comfortable being wrong as I am with being right. It's no fun if I can't say something that I believe, that I've done research on, that I feel somewhere, and then at some point it comes back. Someone's like, "Yeah, well, that didn't work out the way you thought it was." Shout out Dyson Daniels. It's like that. But where's the fun in it if you can't come back and laugh at it? You know what I mean? It's no fun in that. And I think that's the good here. We're gonna say some things that will come true, and some things that won't. But that's not.
And if you're not enjoying,
Go ahead.
yeah, we just want to enjoy it. I just want to enjoy it. And if that's the end of the day, to me, look, and I appreciate the passion for fans. Without the passion of the fans, we don't have a following. We don't have anybody to do this. And a fan's perspective is a fan's perspective. And I love the fact that because we're getting closer to the season, we're about a month away from the start of training camp now. because you can feel the energy starting to build amongst the fan base. They are sensing it. Yes, we know the football season starts this week, and that is going to get the lion's share of attention, but that hardcore fan base that is feeling the basketball is starting to rise up, and that gets me going because I want to be engaged in that conversation. I want to be a part of it, and I want to contribute to it. I also want to listen. I also want to hear what people have to say. So, I mean, I think it's a great time, and I think there's no better place to start kind of than what has been the topic of discussion the last couple of days. There are things that I want to specifically talk about you, but this hadn't happened when we first started talking. But the Pelicans have concluded their California workouts, and Will Guillory did a great piece about the absence of Brandon Ingram from those activities. The Pelicans expected him to be there. His teammates expected him to be there, and he did not show up. I understand it from both perspectives. I get it from both perspectives. What were your thoughts initially when you heard that Brandon was not participating?
I think confusion, because some of the things that I heard behind the scenes was that he was very integral in setting these workouts or some of these workouts up to begin with. So that was one part of it. The other side is I don't see the benefit in it for him because he's in such a weird situation right now, like to where his value is kind of unknown or is maybe even taking a hit. And there's a big question mark in regards to what this guy is worth. And then there's the you have the Pelicans, who I'm sure would love to complete a long-term deal with him, but they're gonna do it at a number that's far less to where he thinks he's worth. So okay, if I thought, well, maybe it just so happened to be around his birthday. Maybe something came up. But I think the confusion for me is that if he wasn't poor, if not even, I won't even say if, because we heard reports beforehand that the only person that was scheduled to not attend was Daniel Tice, which ended up happening. So what changed? And if it was a situation where he decided to step away at the last moment, well, I'm not sure that Brandon is in a situation where he can afford to look like that, because this isn't, people talking about holdouts and stuff like that. Who knows? That could happen, but this isn't a Jimmy Butler situation. This isn't a I gotta think of some other guys, but Jimmy Butler would be the person I would think of. He's someone who everyone knew what Jimmy's value was. Jimmy was going to get paid. And I look at whether it's the Philadelphia situation, but specifically the Minnesota situation, and where he was a part of building something. And there was no question about what he was worth. No matter what type of guy or competitor you thought he was, or no matter if you liked all the, some of the things that he did behind the scenes, his value wasn't questioned around the league. There was, this guy is worth this amount. He's a max player, but he works hard, he plays hard, and he has superstar ability, even if you may question if he's a superstar. The problem with Brandon is that the basketball element is being questioned. There's some things that are being questioned about, how he ended that series, even with him being hurt. There's some questions about, is he stubborn to reality in some perspectives? That the work ethic and being a one-time All-Star, and even being someone that scored 20 points multiple times throughout his career, even being someone who's a plus rebounder, a plus assist guy for his career, a guy that's getting better as a defender, and a dude that's still, that's entering the prime of his career, it's still not enough to overcome what looks like to be a guy that has to continue to elevate and evolve as a basketball player in this era, and a dude that feels as if he's worth the close max money, and the market says he isn't.
It's a really difficult place for Brandon to be in. The part that I understand him not doing is if his agent said, look, we don't have an extension. I don't want to get you injured at a workout. If you're going to get injured, let it be on company time. I can get that part. You know what I mean? Like if that's what your representatives say, because we've seen that plenty of times where it's like, if you're gonna get hurt in the facility, because then you are taken care of. Can't nobody say nothing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's the part your greater points, image wise, around the league, all these things, and like you said, he had been integral in organizing these things in the past. He had been the guy who, a lot of times, and as Will put it, he's the guy who helped create the current Pelicans culture. He is the last standard bearer, quite frankly. He's the only guy left from 5 years ago. He's the only guy left from 5 years ago. Everybody else is gone. There ain't maybe we talk about
it's him and Zion, right?
Him and Zion. And you say Zion has missed a whole year in that. Zion has missed a 2 years worth of games essentially within that. So Brandon had a 3-year head start on Zion assimilating to this culture. It was Brandon's culture. Lonzo gone, Josh gone, Alvin's gone, Stan's gone, Dell's gone. Everybody's gone. There's nobody here who saw Brandon walk through the door, except for Zion, who arrived a month or so after. So
who was the
beyond that, yeah. So I mean, for Brandon, it's in the NFL. You'd say, this is the time of the wide receiver where every wide receiver is getting paid. Brandon is a running back in a wide receiver world.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying? Like he's Derrick Henry. He's these guys looking for that contract. And in the NFL, they tell you 27 is the bad age for running backs. For Brandon, he's in that horrible window. He came along his free agency is coming on at the worst possible time for him. Behind a guy on his team where they have drafted well recently at his position. They have a surplus of players at his position. In a league that values the three-pointer, in a league that wants to play with pace, in a league that and he has a teammate who also duplicates his skill set in the half court in Zion Williamson. They are essentially in the half court going to operate similar ways. And so Brandon, you look at this league now, what are you? Where do you fall? And that is a hard thing for any player to have to realize, that when you're going out in there, and it's a weird financial position. Brandon makes $8 million more than Julius Randle. Brandon makes $8 million more than Julius Randle. Julius Randle has an All-NBA selection. You know what I'm saying? Julius Randle has more All-Stars berths than Brandon Ingram does. But Brandon's in the position where you're going for your fourth contract now. I mean, third contract. You had your rookie, you had your second, and now you go for your third major deal at 27. And that's where this league is with these aprons. You're hitting at this really awkward time. Your team is in a position where financially doesn't make sense to go all in, which you're still kind of, I don't know if it does with this group, especially when you've got more money to spend on the back end for guys like Trey Murphy, who is not going to give you a major hometown discount, has no reason to give you a hometown discount when the entire league wants what Trey Murphy is putting on the line. Trey is a wide receiver in a wide receiver market. Trey is giving you everything. He's going to give you the yards per catch. He's going to give you touchdowns. He can catch it across the middle. He can do all those things. Brandon is a running back in a wide receiver world, and it's just really hard for him, no matter whether you love him or hate him as a player, whether you're indifferent towards him. It's just hard to see where he fits in this world right now, because he's kind of a man with no country. The Pelicans, like you said, like him. They may even love him. But do they want to put a ring on it?
Yep.
And I don't think you can when you got other good-looking prospects who will give you what Brandon will give you, and it's just, or can replicate it enough. And I think it's a very strange place for him to be in. And when they enter camp, and one of the questions that we got, and I'll just go ahead and bring it up now, one of the questions we got from one of the viewers was, if Brandon becomes a distraction, what do the Pelicans do? I don't think Brandon will allow himself to become that type of distraction, to where he's one of those players where you're talking about, we got to send him away, we can't keep him with the team. He's not that guy. I think the only way Brandon becomes a distraction is by not adjusting again. So where his style of play continues to stick out amongst the Pelicans. And if he stands out, that's going to hurt him more than anything else. If you see everybody swimming in one direction and Brandon's kind of treading water, going side to side, he's going to lose ultimately in this league, whether it's with the Pelicans or another team. He has to be all in, because I think the bigger question, rather than all his skills, is does he help a team win? And coming off that playoff series, coming off the World Championships with Team USA, there's a question. You didn't question that in the Phoenix series. Brandon looked like the kind of player who could elevate your team 3 years ago. Now the question is, has he peaked, and can he be a 1A or a 1B type guy? Because he's not. I don't think there's a team in the league that's going to say he's an unquestioned one. But can he be your 1A or your 1B? And I think he has to prove that by going along to get along. And to your point about Jimmy Butler, Jimmy's thing was never about huge numbers. Jimmy's thing was about impacting winning. And I think if Brandon can decide that, there may be a way to make this work, even as funky as this team is, and we're going to get into that. But he has to fit in. He cannot stand out in that way this season.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part, because if you ask him, he might say, "Well, I did sacrifice, right? I took less shots. I averaged the lowest that I've averaged points per game as a Pelican. I applied myself defensively. I did, I played point guard. I did the things that were asked of me, but that's just one side of it. There were other things like it's an unfinished paper. It's incomplete because there's other parts of fitting in that could be even more essential than some of those other things that he did. And look, man, the game is the game. Even if it's unfair, all sacrifice isn't treated the same. It isn't respected the same. Brandon simply being more of a complimentary off-ball shooter adds more to his value than some of the things that we see him doing with the basketball. For someone who in the past few years has slowed down his individual pace tremendously. Me and Lito did a show a couple weeks ago looking back at some of the film from Brandon in 2021. Totally different guy. 2022 even, totally different guy. Just physically. You and I talked about it recently, about the upper body strength that he's added. He's much more slower for a dude that didn't have that amount of athleticism, that amount of quickness to sacrifice, to give. It was so important and so essential to his game. Different guy. The separation was different. The burst was different. The quickness off the dribble was different. Fast forward to the guy that we're watching, that we watched in the playoff series at some points last season, he couldn't separate. Now, I know even with the foot injury, even with the knee injury, I'm sure that played a role. I won't take that away from him. But I know when we're talking about separation, it wasn't that much different than the guy that was fully healthy. He was not and could not move the same. So what do you do to kind of make up for that? If you are going to be a dude that's more of that in some ways moves more like a power forward than he does a three. What do you do to make up for that if you don't have the lateral quickness that maybe you would have liked to have, even in your best year, maybe didn't have? What do you do to make up for that? Not if you added the strength. You become more of a shooter. You become someone who's complementing what others can do on the floor, which is a part of winning basketball. I know you'll go out there and rebound when needed now. You show me that. I know that you can pass the basketball. I know for your position, you're one of the best at your position when it comes to passing the basketball. You're that good. I know you can create. I know you can get to your spots. But if you're not an elite separator, and you're not the guy on your team is Zion Williamson. How do you complement him? So back to your point of talking about fit, that's still the question mark about Brandon, because one of the things that we saw in those FIBA games was that Brandon was asked to do things that people said made him uncomfortable. And unfortunately, that's supposed to be the gift. Being in uncomfortable situations in life, Grubb, is supposed to be a gift. You got to learn how to make it out of those. You got to learn how to thrive in them. because you're not always going to have the basketball. You're not going to always have the control. You're not always going to have your way. And guess what? On winning teams, there are going to be teams that will want Brandon to where he's not going to be the most talented. He might not be the second most talented. If Miami calls, they're not saying, Brandon, this is your team. They might not be saying, Brandon, you're the second guy in line. You might be the third. How do you adjust to that, make the best of it, and still find a way to get your sweet spot 24 points per game? Brandon's figuring that out. And hell, everyone keeps bringing the Phoenix series 2 years ago. And basketball world, dog, that's like 5 years now. That's like dog years now. 2 years. Things change quickly in this game, in this league, man. The way we view somebody last year won't be the way that we view them at the end of next season. And I think for Brandon, he has to catch up to that. He has to catch up to not what he was, not what he's done, not what others didn't do, not what he had to carry in spite of resentment, spite, everything. Now he's up against with coaching staff, whatever deficiencies that are in that locker room, on that roster, and in that organization. He has to look into the mirror and accept, what do I need to do now? If the market is telling me I'm not making $50 million a year going forward. The market is telling me I'm not making maybe even 45. Do I want to win? Do I want to be a part of something? I'm 27. I'm not going to a losing team ain't giving me $40 million to say, all right, you're the future. That window's gone. So now you have to fit in and be a part of something. You gotta change your game. How do you do that to get to the next situation or make the Pelicans look more attractive to the Pelicans? You know what I'm saying? What I got to do? What do I have to do? Go ahead.
Here's what I would do if I'm Brandon Ingram. And I say this with all sincerity. The Pelicans took Jonas Valanciunas, one of the best defensive rebounders in the league. He's out. That's 31, 32 minutes a night of rebounding, of defense, of post presence. All those things are gone. Zion Williamson is not a post player. He ain't driving to the bucket. One of the things that we talked about for Brandon for 2 years now is operating in the mid and the low post. Being a guy that people can cut off of. Again, that's not Zion. At 6'6", Zion is not – you can't put him in the low post and say, cut off of Zion and let him throw over-the-shoulder passes or quick cuts. You can't do that. But at 6'8", Brandon Ingram, with his vision and his length, if he learns that to dominate the mid and the low post with this team, like, coach, I want to play 4 for this team because that's where I'm going to be most effective. We talked about this with Trey Murphy. He's going to play 4 and 5 in these small ball lineups defensively. If you're Brandon, I need to get and you got to account. Somebody's got to count for them 10, 11, 12 rebounds that Jonas was getting each night. So you got to divide that. Herb's got to get him 1 or 2 more. Zion's got to get 1 or 2 more. DeJounte's got to grab 1 or 2 more. If I'm BI, I got to grab 2 or 3 of those rebounds myself. I can't be at 5 boards a game. I need to be at 8 boards a game every night. If I'm Brandon Ingram, how do I make my feet? If I'm not going to do all these, which the 3-point percentage, we're going to talk about that in a second. But if I'm not going to do that, I got to dominate somewhere. And where do I dominate that nobody else on this team now will dominate? I'm not putting Trey in the post. I'm not putting DeJounte in the post. I'm not putting CJ in the post. I'm not putting Herb in the post. I'm not putting Zion in the post. But if I'm Brandon Ingram, there are touches in the post right there for me to score or get my 5, 6 assists a game and make it easier for myself. The other part is, how do I score without the dribbles? Because the comparison was always Kevin Durant for Brandon. And the thing that you and I have talked about for years is there's no wasted dribbles in KD's game. You have never seen a possession in Kevin Durant's life where he has dribbled 10, 11, 12 times pounding the basketball. You and I, when we first started doing this, we would count BI's dribbles. I'll do this up in the stands with folks. And I'd be like, if he dribbles more than 6 times, I bet it's either a missed shot or a turnover. If he figures those 3 things out with relation to this team, he can finish the year in New Orleans.
Yep.
And he might earn that long-term contract. If he says, I'm going to change, like you said, with my body, going into my late 20s, early 30s, what is the player I'm going to be? I'm not a 2. When I came in the league, I played 2 and 3. I'm not that anymore. I'm a 3-4 now. And if I'm going to be that, like if you want that longevity, and I'm not saying to put him in the Harrison Barnes mindset of just being a catch and shoot guy, but what I'm saying is the reason Harrison Barnes is a guy that winning teams still want is because whatever you ask Harrison Barnes to do, he'll do that. And I think for Brandon Ingram, like to get to that stage now, because wherever you're going to be, you are not going to be the number one piece, and you ain't going to be the young guy coming up anymore. So you're in that veterans middle of how do I fit into a winning team? And to do that, you got to be flexible. And I think that's for him is you can still get 20 points, but how do you do that by getting to the line more? How do you do that? Because if we want to talk about shot attempts, Zion Williamson ain't close to nobody at the league leaders in shot attempts, and he's shooting 57% from the floor. So everybody's going to have to give up some shot attempts. Nobody on this team is going to lead the league in shot attempts. So it's how do you make the most of those attempts? And I think for BI, part of it is getting back to the line. And how do you do that? Taking advantage of guys in the post. Taking advantage of guys in the post.
And Grubb, I remember saying this, and shout out to my dog Maples. He was mad at me about this for a little bit, but he's come home. I remember thinking when Zion was out coming back from the meniscus injury. I remember thinking, I was like, how is Brandon going to play the style that he's playing right now, but efficiently work towards winning basketball when Zion comes back? And the first person I thought about was Chris Middleton. And I think even today, that's the kind of guy that Brandon should look to be. Like, Chris is a guy that's going to more than likely, as long as he's healthy, he can get you close to 20 points a game. And I think people view it as a negative because Chris, right, he was second round pick or undrafted. Like, we have to move past what you thought Brandon was going to be. You got to move past where he was selected. You have to move past Phoenix. You got to move past the All-Star game. You got to move past even the 40-point games. What is he now? What type of examples can he model his game after and still get close to the money that he's looking for and be respected as a top player, top 50, top 40, top whatever it is, player in this league? And a guy like Chris Middleton is someone I would look at. A dude that's probably, when right, 25 and 5. Perfect. He's not going, and he loves to get to some of the same areas on the floor that Brandon does. But you know what he'll do as well? He knows his role.
So
He knows his place.
defender. Mm-hmm.
He knows his role. He knows his place, and he knows there's no question whose team it is. And unfortunately, look, Zion ain't Giannis, so I get it. But going back to Brandon and letting go, it's not about what used to be. It's not about what you did and filling in for such. You got to know that everything has changed. Everything has changed, and no matter what, I don't care if Zion's out there on one leg. It's about him. So how do you complement that? And okay, let's say you are the most talented player. You are the one, and Zion's hurt, or Zion's on the bench, and you're playing with CJ and DeJounte. It can't be find me in the pinch post is going through me every single time. No, you got to be more versatile. You got to be willing to be more secondary. You got to be more active when the basketball isn't in your heads. And I think it's a hell of a transition. And it may be this may be the most important part of Brandon's career, because now he's going to have to really make a full and dedicated decision towards what the next 5 years of his career is going to look like. If you want to be the guy that you want to be with the basketball in your hand, dribbling six times in a row, getting to the mid-range, working out there, kind of having all the control, you're going to be on a bad team. And you're not going to make the money that you think that you're going to make, not long-term, because eventually you're going to run out of bad teams to go on. You know what I'm saying? That's just going to happen. And that's saying if you're able to stay healthy, which had been a question mark at different parts throughout your career. Or you're going to have to tone it down just a little bit. You're going to have to compromise just a little bit. And like you said, commit 100%. Everything that Steve Kerr and Ty Lue and Eric Spoelstra, they in those FIBA games were trying to get you to live or to hone in your time and your attention on, even if it wasn't what you wanted to do. are some of the things you got to be more comfortable, willing, and excited about doing. And you'll have a career that will last 7 years, 10 years down the line because we can redefine you at that point. But now, Grubb, Brandon doesn't have a definition. He has a what he does not have a definition in regards to what and who he is anymore. Like anybody else, you got to consistently reinvent yourself. Now we have to see who this next version of Brandon is going for. And that's something that really only he can answer.
And you don't get to choose your windows, unfortunately. Yep. Like when your ascent was happening, your team wasn't ready. And like you said, but that's the past now. We can't go back and relitigate the last 5 years. We can't replay them. We can't undo COVID. We can't undo injuries. Your time to shine as a scorer has passed in that regard. Like the scoring titles, whatever, like you said, those opportunities, unless you're going to play on a bad team, those shots are not there ever for the rest of your career. Do you want to be Zach LaVine? Is that who you want to be? And have 26 points per night, but you finishing with 35 wins every year? You finishing 10th in the East? I don't think that's what he wants. I think Brandon genuinely wants to be a winner. Now, the question is, and look, there are examples of this plenty of times. The Detroit Pistons, who Isaiah Thomas will tell you this all day and all night. They won 2 titles. They didn't have a player make All-NBA in either one of those 2 seasons. They didn't have a player score 20 points per game in any of those 2 seasons. Now, Zion Williamson is going to get 20, but he was scoring 22 last year on a 49-win team. 22 points per game on a 40. Now, his second half of the year was much different, and it ends up at 22. But we can't talk about every year we do this where the Pelicans have the most depth. That means that people want shots. If your team is deep, everybody's got to eat. Herb Jones is growing as a basketball player. He's going to keep scoring more points. Herb's not going to be content with your 9 that he was as a rookie. Trey wants more than 15. DeJounte's used to scoring 20. CJ scored 20 every year of his career except 1.
Yep.
So you're asking everybody to sacrifice in this regard. And if you're the New Orleans Pelicans, again, if I'm talking to Brandon Ingram, I'm like, man, you've never had a team with this much talent overall. Yes, we got flaws, but you've never played for a team with this many options offensively.
Nope.
If we're going to succeed, the 3 things we have to be able to do: defend, rebound, and make threes, because we are small. And if you're small, you better make threes. And for the Pelicans, a team that finished 24th in attempts and 18th in makes per game last year, you have to be top 10 this year in makes at the very least. At the very least, you have to be 10. You probably got to be closer to 5 or 6 in makes. So if anybody's going to add to that total, it's going to be Brandon Ingram. Because I'm not changing. CJ's not going to change his. You know how many threes he's going to take a game. He's not going to add. Zion's not adding to his. I know what Trey's going to do. I know what Herb's going to do in that corner. The guy who can add the most this year, the guy who can fill in more blanks than anybody else, that's the way. If you're Brandon, you've got to look at it that way. I can fill in all the blanks. I can do all the things that you need me to do on the court as a veteran, as a scorer, as a passer, as a rebounder. Now, what combination do you need those in tonight? Because tonight you may not need 25 and 5, Brandon. Mm-hmm. You might need 12, 8, and 10, Brandon. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that has to be, he's got to figure out that that's good enough for him on different nights. It's the same. Kawhi was great at doing that himself. And I'm not putting the pressure on Brandon Ingram to be Kawhi Leonard, but I would look at it that way. Is Kawhi figured out how to be really efficient with his shots? He doesn't even go. He can score 20 plus in the league without taking a bunch of shots. He's still not a heavy volume 3-point shooter, but he's a threat consistently from deep, and he knows how to get to the line. And all those things are based on your craftiness and knowing the game around you. And Brandon, at this stage, 8 years into the league, going into year 9, you know the tricks of the trade, man. It's can you and are you willing to apply them? And the Pelicans are going to give him every opportunity. They do not want to get rid of him for nothing. They don't want to undersell his value. They would like to have that depth and build around it and figure this out. But he has to make that possible. He's the only one that not Willie Green, not the coaching staff, not any of these players. Only Brandon can make that shift internally. And I'm not saying become a Lamar Odom type and just become a second fiddle in that thing. But you need to figure out how to be a star in multiple roles. You are no longer the scoring star of the Pelicans, but you can be the most versatile player on this team. That is something you can aspire to do this year, and it's within his reach.
If you want to win, and look, winning and being one of those kind of players, Grubb, will get you paid in this league. We'll get you paid in this league. Whether or not the Celtics won a championship last season, they were going to pay Derek White. They paid Drew Holiday and got him an extension before they won a championship. Jason Tatum was going to get his money regardless. Jaylen Brown at some point was going to get his money regardless. But those others, they got paid for contributing to winning, to what looks like winning. Whether or not they won a championship, those dudes were going to get paid. Is Derek White more talented of a? Yeah, go ahead.
You got a perfect example in that Celtics team in Kristaps Porzingis.
Yep.
2 years ago, Kristaps Porzingis is traded to Dallas, and he's supposed to be the second guy in Dallas, right? Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be Luka and Porzingis. That's the duo before Kyrie comes along. So you send Porzingis to Boston. He's the fourth guy.
Yep.
This is the former. He's got an All-NBA selection himself. He's got multiple All-Star bids. He's led the league in blocks. This was a guy they were calling the unicorn first, before Wemby came along. It was Porzingis who was the unicorn. What did he have to do to win a championship? He had to decide to be whatever they needed that night, because he still had some 30-point games for the Celtics last year. Mm-hmm. He had nights where he was an offensive terror, but he also had nights when his job was to anchor the defense. Al Horford, same kind of guy who's had multiple All-NBA selections over the years, has turned himself from a starter on an all-star starter, which he was in Atlanta, to a guy who's become a role player in Philly and Boston to contribute to winning. And I'm not saying Brandon's at that stage of his career, but yeah, make those adjustments, the mindset, whatever it is to make this team win. This could be your last opportunity to do this with this group, and you may never get this close again. You don't know what the future holds for you. So to me, it's go all out, go balls to the wall, and just see what happens. Because what's the worst that could happen if you do it that way? What's the worst that could happen if you say I'm going to be the best possible teammate this year, that I'm going to do whatever the Pelicans need me? Your value cannot go lower than it is. I don't think he ends up as a guy who's 15 million. He's not a 20 million guy. He's only going to be 25, 28, 30. So you're not going to damage your value doing that. All you can do is increase the options that you give yourself going forward. All you can do is make other teams say, we need that guy to help us get to the next level. And that's there's only benefit. I don't see risk in deciding to be the new jack of all trades for this team.
The new Brandon Ingram. You know, I mean, that's what it has to be, man. I mean, it's a perfect time for him to reinvent himself. You know, OG Anunoby, same age as Brandon Ingram. Got what? 40 plus million a year. You mean to tell me Brandon at his worst, statistically, if he sacrificed everything possibly, statistically, is going to give you more than OG Anunoby is going to give you across the board. You know, OG has strengths that Brandon won't have, and vice versa. But if you throw in the sacrificing element along with what he's naturally going to give you on the floor per night as a rebounder, as a scorer, as a passer, and in some strengths defensively, as an option, a dude that will still command doubles, that teams will still throw doubles at to get him out of his spots and out of the places in which he wants to. You mean to tell me at the same age as OG Anunoby, Brandon can't come back and take this and turn this into close to what he thinks he's worth? Absolutely. But the difference between the two is that OG Anunoby has a defined role. OG Anunoby has been a part of winning to where they say, no, this is where you fit and this is what you do. 100%. This is where you fit, and this is what you do. And the thing about the Knicks, they have a lot of different guys in which they can point at and say, this is where you fit, and this is what you do. Brandon has to figure that out. It doesn't matter what he was when he came into the league. It doesn't matter who he was then. It doesn't matter what people thought he was. It doesn't matter what he was, who he was compared to. Hell, Andrew Wiggins was compared to Kobe Bryant when he got drafted. Okay, that was one of his comparisons. I'll never forget it. What did he have to turn himself into to be a part of winning a championship? What did he have to turn himself into to, no matter what, Andrew Wiggins will be a part? You can never take that away from him. No matter what the rest of his career looks like, that will be his next team he's on. They're going to be saying, the fans that are people that are doing podcast media, well, they're bringing in someone with championship experience, bringing in someone that was very important. No matter how many years ago it was, you can't take that away from them. Forget what you were. Who are you now, and who will you be going forward? And that's what anybody that loves Brandon Ingram, his agent, his family, his friends, and his teammates need to be telling him. Throw away the Phoenix series. Throw away any 40-point game you had. Throw away the early comparisons. Let's look to today and going forward. How do we get to the fifth? How do we get to the fifth contract? How we do it?
You can't like this league now. You try to get to that fourth, fifth contract, and you are not contributing to winning. If you're just a stats guy, there's no place for you. And I think it's every player in the NBA needs to remember this. Everybody's a role player. It's just what's your role this year.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's a role player. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like the role, even for Drew Holiday, who you would say, is Drew's game that different than it was in New Orleans? Let's just think about this. If you're again, I think a good comparison for the Knicks, it was a good comparison because you're talking about a Knicks team. Jalen Brunson's a guy who's an MVP contender now, a guy who's going to give you 25 a night, who's set the Knicks record for most 40-point games in the playoffs. Dante DiVincenzo's a guy who can give you 20 a night. He's shown that in this league. He can give you 20. Mikal Bridges has shown everybody he can give you 22, 24, 25 a night. He did it. Julius Randle's coming back. He averaged 28. So, I mean, you got four guys over there who have scored 20 points per game in this league, who all have to figure out now, including Julius, who's a very similar situation to Brandon. What you were, what you got, it's not what they need from you now. They can't have Julius stand in the corner and shoot threes now with Mikal and OG and Mitchell Robinson coming back and all these people that they got, and that deep bench of theirs, all these things. Everybody can't get those shots. Everybody can't put up those numbers. So, and Tibbs, for damn sure, is going to tell you what your role is, right? We know for sure Tibbs going to have your role laid out. Can you do it or not? Because if you can't, there's a ticket for you to go somewhere else. That's the perfect, to me. Look, Klay Thompson is an elite role player. When he was with the Warriors, he was an elite role player. You ain't going to give Klay the ball by himself when Steph's gone and tell Klay to go to work. He's an elite role player. Draymond Green is an elite role player. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame being an elite role player. Scottie Pippen, elite role player. You know what I'm saying? All these people that we talk about, Hall of Famers, there are very few guys who are not elite role players behind a star. Joe Dumars, elite role player. Kevin McHale, elite role player. Your second and third guys, that's their job. Be elite role players for your superstar. And every team has to have the one guy. Everybody else, even Kyrie bristled at being with LeBron because he didn't want to be an elite role player anymore. But now he's back to being with Luka an elite role player. All that shit that Kyrie went through to be a star, to get his own team, he is back now in the situation he was in with LeBron, playing with a better player and being the elite second guy. Yep. So if you're Brandon, there's no disgrace in being an elite role player if you embrace that role. If you are willing to take Bam Adebayo is an elite role player. And that's fine. And I think that's the biggest thing is everybody needs to get over that hurdle of, look, a lot of stars in this league are elite role players, and that is okay. And that is okay. And I think for Brandon, Once he accepts that and decides to embrace it, he can still be a phenomenal player in this league. But if he fights it, if he continues to do those things that you said, like you talked about, that made him stand out for what he was not doing, like taking catch and shoot threes, like not driving to the bucket, not getting to the free throw line in certain games, taking advantage of lower opponents, but those games against higher level opponents, where was the step up? Well, now you can do it in a different way. Now those opportunities are going to be there for you in a different way. And I think he can still be highly effective for this team if he embraces that. If he doesn't, it's going to be a real long season for him. But I think the Pelicans can survive it. I think they can figure out how to work around it. But can he? No, and it's going to hurt him long term. So like you said, it's everybody around it. The team has got to pull him back in now. Brandon has given you a signal that he's out. Not way out, not all the way out, but he's drifting away from the nucleus. It's up to Zion now. It's up to DeJounte, who I saw you talk about and say, DeJounte is pulling this thing together. He's taking the responsibility of being the guy who goes out in the Louisiana community, New Orleans, talk to the players, get everybody on board. You going to lead guard DeJounte? Make that phone call to Brandon and say, it's all good. We get it, brother. We get it. We get it. You going through a thing. When we here to win basketball games, we need you to do that. The Zion's got to make that call. Herb's going to do it in his way. Herb ain't going to make the phone call. Herb's going to do it in his way. You know what I'm saying? All these guys want him to be a part of this. I firmly believe that. You see them reaching out to him, in those ways. But they've got to bring him back in. It ain't going to be Willie that does it. It ain't going to be David Griffin that does it. It's got to be the 12 guys in that locker room who know Brandon and say, dude, we can't do this without you. We will. Now, if you don't want to be on board, but we got a much better chance of success with you buying into this all the way. Ain't no such thing as halfway crooks, bro. You got to be all the way in.
Yeah, man. Brandon doesn't have the leverage. Not in this situation, man. Not with what the market and the league told him. Basically, what he's worth at this point, where he's valued as a player, and not with the team that he's with. Because you know what? I think the Pelicans could use Brandon, but they don't need him. They're not in a situation where they need him. In fact, if Brandon decides to sit down, it would make certain situations a lot easier and certain questions a lot easier to answer for them going forward. Mm-hmm. He can't make the mistake of thinking, I need to go sit down. I'm going to look out for me right now. I'm not going to be all in. He can't make that because let's say he decides to not be all in, but he shows up. Well, more than likely, it's going to show on the floor with poor performance. That doesn't help you. You're already fighting that. If you don't show up at all, it makes you look a little weird. And people that weren't paying attention to the Pelicans, now they're paying attention to the Pelicans for the wrong reasons. And you know what they say on the outside? They say, well, man, you got DeJounte Murray, you got Trey Murphy, you got Herb Jones, you got Zion, you got CJ McCollum, you got a couple good role players. Yeah, you don't have a center, but like, why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? That's a dream for someone like you, right? Whether it's right or wrong, that's how it's viewed. Brandon has to rework the perception, for those that really, really know and key in. Because again, man, like, we saw this team and we've seen them back-to-back years and glimpses without Brandon Ingram. And they look different. They don't look like they're starving without. They don't look like they are missing something. They look like they could use something in which, if Brandon decides to buy in a certain way, could elevate them even higher than maybe we think. But it's not enough to where if he doesn't show up, it's specifically with this team right here, some parts of them don't miss a beat. And that's the scary part for Brandon. I think he has to really hold on to that, man, and really know and really, cherish what that means and have fun, man. The money, you can't do anything about the contract, the money, the value, and what the future holds, man. You gotta find a way to make this a fun season, and you gotta find a way to make this, a year where maybe this ain't the year where you remind folks. This is the year where you simply have fun and you start the new process of turning into the next version of you, save the next contract to figure out to remind folks, this is who I am and this is what I do. You got to use this year as a year and say, okay, welcome to the new me. This is what I'm doing. This is, even a better version of what was last year. He ain't coming in and being a fifth option, Grubb. It ain't like his reward for coming in and saying, all right, Trey Murphy starting, you coming off the bench, you the fourth option. We're gonna give CJ more shots. No, you need to be talking to CJ McCollum, who told me and told many others, Grubb. I looked around and said, well, damn, everybody can't play in the mid-range. Everybody can't play in the same spots. Everybody can't love to go to the same areas of the basketball floor. What do I need to do? I got it. I shoot more threes. I'll be out here. I'll be cool. And I still get mine. That's the mentality. I'm going to alter my game a little bit when we're healthy and still be the same guy that you traded for. Brandon got to find that. He got to find that feel, man. Whatever that is.
It reminds me of that Kobe Bryant commercial when he says, "Are you the same animal, but a different beast?"
What the fuck does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
But I mean, that kind of makes sense here, and it's there will be nights. If you're Brandon Ingram, what you got to think about is, man, there's 82 different nights of this season. There's going to be nights when teams throw the wall at Zion and he gets stymied, and they need you to do what you do. There's going to be nights when it's just flowing for you, and the players around you realize you got it going, and they give you the rock to do what you do. But you get to pick those spots now. And I think I'd look at it as this way, like you talked about the health concerns for all these guys. View it as help in managing your own health, because I don't have to do it every night. There are 3-4 other guys capable on any given night of giving somebody 40, not just 20. You got guys on this team who have proven they can score 40. We've seen CJ put up 40. We've seen Trey put up 30 plus. We've seen Zion put up 40. We've seen DeJounte Murray in this league put up 35, 40 points. We've seen Brandon put up 40. So you got 4 or 5 guys who can on a night can give you 40 in this league. I ain't got to do it every night, man. I really don't. And I don't care. Man, nobody remembers how many all-NBA selections you got. Nobody remember. You can't pull that all-star jacket out the closet and show it to anybody 10 years from now because they won't care. I don't remember who started in an all-star team 2 years ago. Don't. You ask me all 5 starters from the West, I'll tell you some names that I'll probably be close because it's a cast of characters that I'm picking from. But it doesn't matter. Does it matter? We live in a world now where all these players understand you are judged by your championships. If you want to go down and list in the pantheon of greats, you got to have some rings. You got to have some. That's the hardware that counts. And so if Brandon wants to get to that place, and if you want to do it this year in a Western Conference that is up for grabs, as we all say, yes, there are favorites. Yes, there are favorites, but Oklahoma City still has to prove that they are what they are. Minnesota has to prove that they are what they are. All these other teams, Denver has to get back to what they were. And I don't know if they are that anymore. They still got Jokic, and that gives you a lot. But you just got beat in the postseason. He didn't look great at times. And you lost a key component. So if you're the Pelicans, man, if we all buy into this, there is a chance. There is a legitimate chance that we could get. There ain't no guarantees. This is sports. But you give yourself a real chance to all these play. Every year we are in this position where the media is doing the same thing. And you see it on Twitter. You see it in these podcasts. Already started. Pelicans, one of the most intriguing teams in the league. We've been hearing that for 3 years now. How intriguing the Pelicans are. It's either now or never for this group because everybody won't be back next year. One way or another, out of this top 7, at least 2 of them are gone soon.
Facts.
One way or another. You can't afford them all. So out of this top 7 that everybody loves, 2 of them gone soon.
Yep.
Get ready for it. So if that's the case, if this is the last time this band going to be together, then play your ass off. Go to these concerts, bring the house down, get your money, and get off tour. Do it. And I think they can absolutely do that. But it's nobody has more say in the Pelicans' success this year, though he may not be the most important player. Nobody's gonna have more say than Brandon Ingram in whether or not the Pelicans get to the highest level or have a really good season again, win 45 plus games, but then are gone either in the first round or at most the second round.
100%.
Let's talk about the 3-pointers real quick. Like we talked about, this team's 24th in the league, 18th in makes. We know the tempo has to be there if you go play small ball. I'm coming more and more to the realization I think Zion will start at center because I just don't see them starting 6'8". What's the point in starting Daniel Tice at 6'8" to me? I just don't see the point. If he were 6'10", if he was 7 foot, okay. But I'm starting to figure if you're willing, you're going to find out. Let's find out right now off the bat. Let's start these guys together. Let's get our 5 best players on the floor, and we'll roll the dice from there and just figure it out. If guys will play, Tyke's going to play because of foul trouble, because of rotations, whatever. He's going to get 15 to 16 minutes a night. But what we're really trying to do is get your best players on the court for the most amount of minutes. So if that's the case, and they're playing in this tempo, people got to shoot the ball. They got to shoot threes for this team. It seems to be one of those things that ebbs and flows so much with this team. Really has talked about this number. I don't think you can put a number in people's heads.
Yep.
Because I think if you start shooting for the number, I think that becomes something that you don't really ever get to. I think the number comes because of repetition and commitment and practice.
Yep.
That it just becomes a natural flow of the game. And that's where the Pelicans have to get to. How do they get that buy-in level of playing that way? Because there is that contradiction. I think Zion, as much as he loves to run, he does like to have the ball in his hands and work and see where his advantages are. B.I. does the same. DeJounte has done a little bit of that in Atlanta when he had the ball and got to be the lead guy. How do they break that early? And how important is that they set that tone now that they are going to run and get those shots up early in the clock?
I think you said it, Grubb, when you mentioned about simply the lack thereof, the void is at the center position plays into this particular conversation's favor. Like, because you don't have a center, because you're not waiting to set up, having having Jonas Valanciunas or having whoever you want to throw out there starting games, you have to be faster. You have to play faster. You have to not only do you have to rebound, but you have to go. And therefore you're going to have to space the floor. Like, what's going to be your superpower? How are you going to overwhelm teams? Because you have enough talent to where you should be able to do it, but you got to figure out which pocket that is. Right? It's not going to be points in the paint anymore. You have some guys that can do that, and you have one particular guy who can arguably is the best in the world at it, but that's not your strength anymore. It's not going to be dominating the glass. So what is it going to be? It's not going to simply be your ability to create. It's not your offense. It's not your style. It's not the way that you call and manage games necessarily. So what is it going to be? What should be that we're gonna truthfully be switchable 1 through 5. We got a bunch of guys here that have played enough games together, and the right guys that we've got in that are gonna know how to fit in. We have the right we have games, or we have players that can complement different styles that are all used to, in one way or another, playing a little bit outside of their comfort zone. But shooting needs to be a part of that. If you're getting up and down the floor, and you are a smaller team, and you are a team that's not going to be bruising or punishing in that respect, but you have a bowling ball in Zion Williamson, and you have someone who can get downhill in Brandon Ingram, and you have someone who can also get downhill in DeJounte Murray. Well, that means that there's going to be a lot of attention there, even with some of the things that you lack. It's okay, Trey Murphy. CJ McCollum, can you space the floor for me? DeJounte Murray, you've improved off ball. Your time in Atlanta made you a better 3-point shooter. Okay, let's do that. Hey, Jordan Hawkins, your best attribute and your only attribute is going to be your ability to. They're going to have so many different small ball options. You just signed Javonte Green. Man, look, you watch Javonte Green play. He is a power forward stuck in a shooting guard's body. They put Javonte Green in the dunker spot at 6'4". That's who he is. So what's going to be your superpower? And I think your ability to space the floor and make teams uncomfortable when you are on the go has to be it. I don't know if the attempts, because I'm with you, I don't know if the number is as important as the strategy, as the identity. And you build it now because now is the time when you can start to put it in guys' minds now in regards to how they are going to ideally affect the game and affect winning. They can now start to focus and practice. Okay, well, this is where I'm going to need to be on a break. When DeJounte gets the ball or when Zion gets the ball and go, this is where I need to be. Certain guys, they know where they're going to be at already. But a guy like DeJounte got to figure out, okay, I'm not going to always have the basketball. When I'm in Atlanta and I get the rebound off a go, I'm going. Well, that might not be the plan here. When I get the rebound off a go, I may be hitting Zion immediately in transition. Where do I feel the lane? Am I running down the lane looking for an opportunity to attack the paint, or am I going to a corner? And I think that's just simply they're gonna have to be versatile because they have so many different guys that can do, I think, a myriad of things, but they have to figure out a way to put it together. But a dude like Brandon, we already talked about how important it is for him shooting the basketball. But not only Grubb, do I think it's important for them to shoot the threes, I think their best players have to involve themselves in it, including Zion. It has to be a full group effort for that to be your superpower because you know the attention that Zion's going to get. You know the attention that DeJounte is going to get in transition. You know how teams are going to look at Brandon when Brandon has the basketball and CJ, how much of a pull-up threat he is. Best way you can help them out is to space the floor because the things that's bothered this team so much in past years is their inability to space the floor consistently or not having the right threats and the right options out there. I think they got them now. I think they have enough of them. And now the roster is so weird and it's so lacking in certain areas. Some of those guys are going to be forced to play. They're going to be forced to be out there. And, I think they have to lean into something. And to me, I think it's going to have to be that.
My team comp for them would be the Kings from 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Like, I think that, when the Kings finished third in the West, won 50 games and were the number one offense that year, but didn't have the defensive, I think, stoppers that the Pelicans do have. I don't think that they had anybody who's a Herb Jones level. They don't have anybody, with the 6'10" length of a Trey Murphy. They didn't have but I think, you could pencil in, let's say you can take some of the Sabonis skills and apply those to Brandon Ingram. You can take some of those, the face up, the ability to see cutters and watch guys that do secondary break in those transition situations and flare out to those corners and let Brandon see the floor in that way. You look at a DeJounte Murray, you talk about he may not be as fast per se as, the Kings backcourt, but he's got his own quickness. He's a great athletic finisher around the rim. He gives you some of those combination of Malik Monk skills in there as well. And you have the outside shooting in your CJ McCollum. You got your, all those types of things where I'd say CJ is better than Kevin Huerter. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I would definitely take CJ over Kevin Huerter any day. So you give me that. I think that, and you look at a Keegan Murray in that role, Herb Jones athletically and defensively is I think, again, would be ahead of Keegan Murray, where Keegan is probably a better 3-point shooter, but Herb was right near 40%. So what are we complaining about there? So I think, you look at the offensive potential if you commit to it. And the thing about that Kings team 2 years ago was that they were all in on that offense. They couldn't stop nobody, but every night they were running that offense. Same with Indiana last year. Now, the Pelicans don't have a Miles Turner to block some shots or to be your big, but what were the Pacers, no matter what, they're going to give you 125 tonight. You was
Yep.
gonna get 125 from the
Yeah.
Pacers. They're gonna run up and down. They're gonna get shots in the first 10 to 12 seconds of the shot clock up. That's just who they're gonna be. And
Yep.
knew again, they had enough guys at the end of the shot clock who could close out a possession. The Pelicans have guys who can close a possession if you need to. So, like you said, it's a mindset thing, and this is the test for Willie Green, who is in a very weird place because most coaches who win more games every year and a significant increase at that year to year, 7 games minimum since his first year, an increase in wins. When you have that, but you're still under this pressure of people don't really know what kind of coach you are. This is the
There you
test
go.
for Willie Green. Can you get them all on that same page out of the gate? Because what we've seen out of Pelicans too early is win game 1, win game 2, those last 8 in that first 10, and Willie has always stressed these 10-game blocks. They have not really produced
Yeah.
in those that last group of 8. So I think it's really critical for this team, even if they don't come out of the gate 6-4, 7-3, 8-2, you need to see that commitment from game 1. And that's on Willie Green. More than any other time in his career, I think that's what David Griffin is going to be looking for, is coming out of camp. Everybody's going there. Nobody had any offseason surgeries. Zion is healthy. Brandon is healthy. CJ is healthy. Nobody went into this offseason saying, I'm feeling really bad. Nobody's recovering from nothing. So there's no excuses on the table in that regard. But when everybody shows up, everything we want to do, we can do it 100%. Everything we need to install, we can install with everybody on the
Right
floor.
now.
There's no ramping up here. It's let's go from day one.
And look, Grubb, I think a lot of things that's lost when it comes to identity is sacrifice. Like there are with a true identity, there comes some losses, there comes weaknesses that you have to be okay with, things that you're giving up. And I think for the Pelicans, they wanted to try to be similar to how they built the team. They want to try to be a little bit of everything. Well, a little bit of everything sometimes just makes you average, makes you above average. You got to figure out. You got to know if I'm great at this, I'm giving up this. If I'm getting up and down the floor and I'm playing small, I won't be the rebounding team I want. I may not be the defensive team that I think I am on paper, because there are going to be some games where that lack of size either has inferior players out there or just has you at a mismatch of your best players in foul trouble. That's just how it's going to be. And I think for them, that's it. In previous years, it was, we're going to be tough. We're going to defend. We're going to slow teams down. But you know what? We also want to get out and run. But we also want to shoot 43s, but we also want to dominate the glass. You can't do it all. You can't have a team that plays 2 different games. You can have a team that's capable of it, but what the Pelicans ended up having over the past few years were 2 identities. They had an identity when they went small, and they had an identity when they came out of center. Guess what? When Golden State comes out, over the years, didn't matter if Draymond was out there. It didn't matter if Kevon Looney was out there. It didn't matter if Andrew Bogut. It didn't matter who was out there. David West, you name it. Boogie, they had the same identity. You fill in a player, the rules of the game were the same, and you got to find a way to adapt to what we're doing and what we have to do to survive. They made that based off of the strengths of their players and what they needed to do. The Pelicans got to figure that out. And right now, it's the perfect time, because you don't want to be doing this when the season, we go through this all the time where they're figuring it out in the season and they get hot. And then boom, a regular roadblock that always hits, an injury. Or, they go through a bad stretch of games. You got the time to build the momentum now, work out some of the kinks now. But I'm with you. And it's on Willie Green. And the best part about this, Grubb, is that the identity that this team needs to build goes against everything that he naturally loves. Similar to Brandon Ingram, it puts him out of his comfort zone for the betterment of the roster that is put together and set up right now. You might argue he might have just as much on the line as Brandon Ingram does this year. So
I think this is for Willie. This is the contrast between philosophy and strategy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like when you talk about the Heat way, the Heat way is a philosophy. It's what they expect everybody to come in mentally and do. But the style of play is dictated by what you got on the roster. And I think in sports, you have to adjust to what you got. And I think those are the coaches that we most admire are the ones who could take their philosophy and apply it to different sets of players. The same reason we look at Pat Riley and say, look, with the Lakers, it's showtime. With the Knicks, it's beat your ass. And in Miami, it's a different level of beating your ass because they had a little more skill with Dwayne Wade and with Shaq at the end of his career. But it's an adjustment to what you've got. Even Steve Kerr with the evolution of the Warriors over the years and the different role players he's had to add, they had to figure some things out. But the basic principles are the same. And with Boston, Joe Mazzulla, who is, you could criticize him, and I know I have, but the thing that the Celtics were able to do is default to their habits because they know. Joe said we shoot 45 threes, but it's not, you don't see it mentally in their head. They're not thinking, I got to shoot a three here. They shoot threes because they've been given that green light 4 months earlier. So it don't matter if they up 20 or down 20, they're going to shoot threes. That's who the Celtics were. That's who they are. And they are not changing for you. Even when announcers were saying, what are the Celtics doing taking these shots? They're like, this is who we are. And it's different than I think what you saw in, let's say, Houston, where you died by that because it was not a system. It was a guy. In Houston, and the conversation about James Harden, when it was James Harden saying, I am the system. That's why you ain't won nothing.
That's the problem.
That's why you ain't won nothing. The philosophy versus the strategy. And I think for Willie, you want your principles. You want your guys to be a certain way. Yes, all that, Willie, we get it. But you got to adjust strategy now. And you got to make sure that's that thing. Like you said, it's not a hot seat, I would say, but it's warm because you're 4 years in the NBA now, 4 years for a head coach. Everybody's making these decisions now. Unless you got some skins on the wall, 4 or 5 years is about your expiration date.
Yeah. And you have to be able to adapt. Everything that you mentioned is all about being able to adapt. It's all about being person that I don't think we mentioned was Greg Popovich. He to be in San Antonio as long as he's been overall, there was so many parts of from the dynasty years to beyond to watching his superstar age to where he had to adapt to watching the superstar from the previous regime, him age and him eventually leave, having to figure that out again. To welcoming in new superstars, you got to change on the fly, whether that means pace, whether that means style, whether that means simply adapting to what I have. Like if I want to make lasagna, but everything that I have in this kitchen is telling me I gotta make macaroni and cheese, well, I better be making some goddamn macaroni and cheese.
Like you ain't got no tomato sauce. All you got is cheese and pasta and milk. And you trying to make lasagna.
You know what I'm saying? You gotta make with what's in front of you, and that's what that's to me. That's the next step with Willie. You can't afford to be stubborn in these businesses, man, and in life. You gotta adapt and you gotta evolve with the time and what is being asked of you. You fall in love with certain players, certain archetypes, certain styles. You're gonna die with them. You gonna be the next Fossil, and you don't want that, man. I'm hoping that even for someone like him, we talk a lot about Brandon. We spent a long time in the show talking about the new version of Brandon. This also has to be the new version of Willie Green. This has to be a reintroduction, the new version of Willie Green for him to reach the next stage, the next level of his career and change the minds of some, including people like me, that don't think he can be a part of what makes this team great down the line.
I mean, Buzz 2 years ago, Willie was top 10 in Coach of the Year voting, something like that. Ain't got on the list the last couple of years. And I think he's not seen like a Mark Daigneault. He's not seen, like a lot of the younger coaches who have come up around him, whether it's in Memphis, whether it's, at all these locales where there's these new young hot coaches who are coming up. Willie's not seen as that because I don't think people view him as a guy who can put his imprint on a franchise yet. You see him as a guy that players will play for, Certainly. That they haven't quit on, sure. But have you put your imprint on the franchise? Do people say, when you face a Willie Green team, this is what you're going to get? Other than effort. And that's something that we've talked about for 3 years now, is that your identity cannot be
your effort.
we try hard. Like, that's the minimum. Your identity cannot be we try hard every night. Good for you. Congratulations.
What Chris Rock said? Well, I take care of my kids. You're supposed to, motherfucker. Supposed to.
You won an award for shit you're supposed to do. Y'all supposed to play hard. And Willie, there has to, at some point, you got to feel, like you said, your coach gives you some advantage somewhere. And the coaches we talk about in this league, the ones who got it, it's either, hey, that coach is great at ATOs. This coach is great at getting his guy shots when he really needs to. This guy has, what's Willie's thing? What's the part of Willie Green's coaching philosophy that he can take anywhere and any team is going to say, we got Willie Green, we can do this. And I think right now, 2 years, 3 years, now is the time. Your feet are no longer wet. You know what I'm saying? Your feet are planted in the soil. There's nobody over your shoulder. This is firmly your team. The roster has been constructed in the way that you wanted it to for the most part. The guys that you wanted, they drafted the kinds of players that you wanted, guys with experience and a level of maturity. You've gotten all those things. Your veterans are veterans now. You know what I'm saying? You don't have young vets anymore. Your vets are 8, 9, 10 years in. Brandon is a 9-year player in this league now. He's not a 3-year guy. CJ's 12 years in, 13 years in. DeJounte is a decade in. These are not pups. So, yeah, the expectation is now you have the right mix. There are no guys in the rotation with 2 years or less of experience that you're counting on. Jordan Hawkins is a luxury. The youngest guy you are counting on to give you minutes is Jose Alvarado. That you're counting on a nightly basis. Least experience Jose Alvarado.
Yep. As of right now, yep.
Because if we talk about the rotation, if an NBA rotation is 8, 9 guys deep, show me the young guy in that rotation, man. Like you talk about earlier, Trey and Jose at 3 years in, like we took 3, 4 years now. Like what? We're not talking about players who have not, like Trey started 60 games in a season already. Like, so none of these guys, Herb has been a starter since he was a rookie. None of these guys now can say, Jose's even started 20, 30 games at this point in his career. There's no questions anymore. There's no excuses anymore. Whatever the roster construction is, it is what it is. You got to figure it out because, everybody keeps asking for a center. It ain't happening before the break because the salary concerns in this league and the fact that the bigs that you are thinking about, whether it's Walker Kessler or whomever, Danny Ainge knows Walker Kessler's value is only going up. I ain't got to trade him today. What's Danny Ainge's incentive to get rid of him before the start of the season? There ain't none. He's only making $2 million a year. His value goes up as the year goes on.
Yep.
They got all the picks in the world in Utah. They got if anybody needs a big, they got to come to Utah because there ain't a lot. The Pelicans have already found out. Ain't a lot of bigs available. Everybody's grabbed them all up already. So if you're trying to get a starting quality big, a guy who can protect the rim, if you're Danny Ainge, I ain't in no rush to get rid of that cheap big white boy in Utah. Why am I getting rid of a cheap big white boy in Utah? Nah. You can't have enough of them in Utah. You can't have enough cheap, large white dudes. The tradition of Adam Keefe, Greg
Ostertag is smiling somewhere.
You know what I'm saying? There's a whole lineage of big corn-fed white boys in Utah and Walker Kessler is all right with them. You ain't gonna turn this into no corn road hippity team in Utah. It's in Salt Lake City. We shut it down at 9 o'clock. Have a glass of milk. So just have to relax. And this is the team you got. But I think there's a great opportunity for the Pelicans if they commit to it. Like you said, I think that's the thing for this season. That's the overarching word is commitment. What are y'all committed to doing? And I really love the fact that from what we've seen out of Zion Williamson, I think we are fully past the time when you had to question his commitment to the game of basketball. I think he is an adult. And that was the biggest part of it. He had to grow the fuck up. And I think he has grown up. He is an adult now in that sense of the word. He gets what being a professional basketball player is. You see it with his body. You see the joy in his face again. He's not thinking about stuff. I think, the fact that he's coming off an offseason where he doesn't feel like he's had to rebuild his body in some way. He's already in shape. He's going to walk into camp the first day and he's going to feel good about himself. He's going to feel good about his position in this league. He still is a guy that people look at and say, the best is ahead for you. So, it's about commitment. What are these guys committed to doing? And I feel like, for by and large, yeah, if I'm looking at DeJounte Murray, if I'm looking at CJ McCollum, I'm looking at Herb Jones, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, everybody we talked about, I don't see a lack of commitment. The whole thing goes back full circle to that one dude standing outside the circle who wasn't in California.
Yeah. I mean, and you mentioned Trey Murphy, right? Trey is still on his first contract. Out here with an extension that hasn't been guaranteed, that hasn't been completed. He knows what his value is. He clearly has had some conversations, but the numbers ain't right. The situation ain't 100% right yet. Playing patient and letting it play out. He's out there. Difference is, you mentioned Trey's a wide receiver in a wide receiver market. What he does well is going to be paid and valued in this league, no matter how many times it changes. From now to 10, 15 years, it's clear. It may get a little bit better. There may be more things in which that Trey's able to do today that or 5 years from now that he wasn't able to do yesterday. But there's no question there. It's bought in, no matter what. And I think whether it's Brandon, and in a lot of ways, that's if we could, it kind of the microcosm of this show is, all of this is about buying, and no matter what your situation is, no matter what, even for this team, no matter what they're lacking, can you identify what the strength is, what the core intangible is going to be, the core deciding factor of what separates you from the other teams in this league. The talent is there, but you got to put the puzzle together. And that means it's certain ill-fitting pieces, unfortunately, that are going to go in certain voids that they didn't imagine, or they weren't made to fill. But that's what buying in is. That's what true sacrifice is. No matter if this team is championship ready or not, which nobody would confuse them with the Denver or with the Boston or such and such. You don't put this amount of talented players on a team if you are not planning for them to be dominant at some point. But now is the time to figure out what that dominance looks like, because no one knows. No one has the slightest idea what that dominance looks like. And that's discounting. There's going to be somebody that we're not talking about right now. It's going to be a very important part of this team. Somebody that we're not even acknowledging with attention. It's going to be very important in what they do. Someone that surprises, someone that disappoints. But your main guys, your main 7, your main 8, this is the time for the Pelicans. We're not having conversations this early about how important it is for them to figure out shit right now, because typically they aren't. Typically there's nothing to figure out. Or if there is, we don't expect them to figure it out right now. What we talk about, all right, well, we'll see it in training camp. We're talking about it a few weeks away from even media day. The bar is low, but for the Pelicans, that's a step up. It's for a team like them, it's a luxury to be in a situation. That shows that even with how weird your team is, you got some talent there, and you got something to be special. But like you said, from Brandon, from DeJounte, from CJ, that's the beauty in building this shit early on. Because, I guarantee you, whatever DeJounte's thought was, oh, okay, I know exactly how I fit this team right now. It's not going to be the way that best helps the team down the line. Your individual thought on how you walk into a company, you walk a part of an organization, a franchise, a team, 9 out of 10, it never matches what their thought for you is. It's gonna be interesting, man. And I hope, I'm with you. I think if for this team to reach their ceiling, Brandon has to identify what that is, along with the team in itself. Mm-hmm. Stick to it and be all in with it.
Man, when we have conversations both, about basketball and we talk offline and about life, this is kind of like resonating with me in a different way right now, because I'm thinking about just, the kind of year that it's been. And as well as anybody, I've told you about how my year has been. But understanding, again, that we all are lacking in some way. You, me, everybody. However many billions of people there are on this planet right now, we all lacking something. And you got to rely on other folks, and you got to adapt. It's adapt or die. And what is asked of you on Monday may not be what I need from you on Tuesday. And I go back to, one of my first jobs. I was a waiter. And he tell you real quick, the worst thing that you could say as a waiter is, that ain't my job. You know what I mean? Like if somebody asks you, hey, I need another glass of water. That ain't your table. Hey, that's your table when they ask for it. You know what I'm saying? You ain't gonna walk past no customer and be like, hey, you ain't my table. I ain't getting you that water. Hey, my food ain't right. That ain't my job. I don't cook. Whatever it is that people need at that moment, you got to take care of it. And that's customer service. And I think that's also being a teammate. And I think that's the thing, is for the Pelicans, it's whatever we need from you tonight. Whether you Zion Williamson or you are Jose Alvarado, you Carlo Makovic. 2 minutes that Carlo gets, 5 minutes maybe. Hey, bro, you got to be big tonight in them 2 minutes. If you ease me, see, hey, if we tell you, bro, we're just putting you out there for 5 fouls tonight, then that's what you got to give me, is them 5 fouls. You got to bang the shit out of people and be willing to take that for us. Can nobody be, I guess the last analogy is the Temptations. Man. Ain't nobody bigger than the group. Ain't nobody bigger than the group. And they may be coming to see Zion Williamson and the Temptations. They may be coming to see. That's maybe the show. But if Blue ain't singing the bass, if Eddie ain't singing the tenor, the songs don't work. So, you know what I'm saying? And that's the thing for the Pelicans. Like, it don't matter who you are in this. Your role is vital, but you got to accept it. What do I need from you tonight? And Willie's got to be unafraid to ask that of his guys. And these players have to be unafraid to accept that as the terms and conditions of success. What do you need from me tonight? Because it ain't 82 games of the same. There's 29 other teams, and you got to play them 29 different ways.
Well said.
Brother, I took up enough of your time, but it's always a pleasure. And we'll do this multiple times throughout the season. Remind the folks who don't know, who are maybe just seeing you for the first time, how they can keep up with all the things that you do covering the Pels.
Yeah, man. I'm with the media group Boo Crew Media. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Impatient Bull. I've been busy this summer, putting together as much content as possible, trying to, stretch the realms of creativity when talking about this team and this franchise and even other stuff as possible. And yeah, man, I mean, I think whether it's Pro Pros Talk, whether it's Boo Crew Media, whether it's Hard in the Paint here, whether it's the Bird Calls, no matter what, man, what I would say, whether you are tuning into me, you're tuning into something that Grubb's doing, whatever, rock with the people, man, that's, coming in with something genuine, man, that has stories, that have more than just passion and information and knowledge. I don't want people to watch me just because they think that I can tell them something that they haven't heard about the Pelicans. I want them to watch because they're entertained. I want them to watch because they leave with something. I want them to watch because there's something that they thought about within themselves internally that resonated. That's what this is about, man. This therapy for me. No matter how much money is distributed, no matter how many laughs I get, no matter how many people I meet along the way, this is therapy for me. And me talking to my brother here, David Grubb, my OG, It's therapy. Whether it was an hour, we've had shows that close to 2 hours, 30 minutes, whatever the case may be. It ain't nothing but therapy, man, because you don't get a chance to do this often. Ain't no different from you when you talk to your homie and y'all was supposed to, your boy come over the crib for 5-10 minutes and y'all sitting there talking about nothing for an hour or 2 hours. It's the same thing. We just on the screen with with computers and a webcam. That's it. It ain't nothing different. So, I hope that I don't care if y'all follow me or not. Y'all gonna see me at some point, just like y'all gonna see Grubb. But please, man, find something deeper when y'all watch these folks. Find something deeper when y'all watch these shows. It's bigger than just basketball. I just so happen to talk about this, but this is a real life confidant of mine. Whether I talk to him every week or I talk to him, a couple times a month. That's really what it's about, man. It's about the relationship, the stories, the message, the fun, and just sitting back, man, and watching folks that are doing something deeper than just talking about sports. Sports gonna be here by the time me and him both dead. Dead and gone.
The thing that I think we bonded over in the beginning was that we wanted more. Like, we wanted to do more with this opportunity, this platform that we get. And look, basketball is a love language. Yeah, absolutely. Talking about this game has brought me a lot of relationships and introduced me to people that I never would have met otherwise. But at the same time, like you said, it's a conduit to deeper thoughts and deeper ideas. And I learned something and I'm entertained. I think we're an entertaining duo when we get together. I have entertained my share of folks at Pelicans games from time to time. I have been heard from other sections talking about it while I'm in the media area. And yes, that is who I am. But ultimately, yeah, I just love the feedback that we get. I love the impact that we have had, and I think it only continues to grow. Like I said, we're gonna do this several times throughout this 82 game process. Hopefully 100 games that we get out of this team if they do what they're supposed to do. So until the next time, I am David Grubb. He is Chris Conner. This has been the Bird Cause. And in the words of my man Preston Ellis, let's go Pels.